This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Self-love comes before loving another. How else will you have anything to give? But here's the thing, self-love can only be unconditional, or it will never be. Your life is here and now, whatever your circumstances are. And love cannot be on hold until you think you'll be perfect. You are always perfect in your imperfection. S.O.L. Valeria Teles interviews Ronny Hatchwell. She is the author of Daily Inspirations with Ronny's Doodles, Be and It Will Be, and Be and It Will Be, the simple and easy way to find peace within. Ronny was born in Israel, grew up in Rhodesia, present-day Zimbabwe, until 9 years old, and then London until she was 21. She has now been living in Israel for over 40 years. Ronny has 2 children, one in Israel and another in New York, and is a proud grandmother to 4 wonderful young grandchildren. Ronny has spent to date 30 years in the local music industry and worked in management, culminating to CEO of EMI Music Publishing, Israel, ending in 2007. Ronny now dedicates her life to the teachings of her method, Be and It Will Be, and travels around the globe, offering workshops that guide people to live in inner peace, enabling them to their own journey. Ronny holds private sessions, group workshops, and during these Corona times, has many students she Zooms with to teach her method. She also offers workshops within the entertainment field, where she guides artists, writers, and actors to accept themselves and release the past in order to achieve success. Her 3-stage workshop drives students to a new and clear slate, where there are no ties to the past and all that is left is a meeting place between him, herself, and his and her gifts. Ronny's passion for bringing peace to the world led her to work as head of industry relations at Creative Community for Peace, an organization that advocates building bridges through the world of art and music. And she also holds this current position. We believe that the only chance left for there to be real peace is dialogue and building trust between people. Ronny Hatchwell, Creative Community for Peace. Meet Ronny at beanditwillbe.com. Here's the interview with Ronny Hatchwell.
In your own words, who is Ronny Hatchwell?
You know, it's very funny, Valeria, but the more I teach and the older I get, I don't know who I am. It's like I'm looking at this woman who's got a voice that's coming out and her hands are sort of roaming around, and I don't know what that is. I don't know how to explain that. And that in itself gives me the assurance that there's something bigger than me. Because if you can't understand it and it's beyond the mind, there has to be something that's bigger that knows something I don't. And that's what's actually been happening to me, because I get up in the morning and I realize something is happening to me. My eyes are opening, my heart's beating, the lungs are being filled. I'm not doing that. Something is doing that for me. So what am I left with? To live an experience, but I don't know what the I is anymore, because every time you open your mouth and you begin a sentence by saying I, that is the ego talking, because the soul doesn't have to talk. It's just being. It's there all the time. So that question for me lately it leaves me dumbfounded, because I really, really don't know what this is. And that puts me in a space where I can just be and just allow and not know the understanding that I don't have to know gives me such freedom, because then otherwise I'm in the mind again and I have to try and understand.
Right.
So I decided I don't want to understand anymore.
You know, that resonates very much true to me. It's almost as if the I that you speak of that has been hijacked by this, what we call the ego, the false self, and then assumed the position of that bigger I, which we would say is the soul, is the spirit, is consciousness itself. And then, you're right, then it cannot be known. It's not a thing. So, it's not an experience. It's the one that provides the experience. It's the experience it's happening in it, right?
Exactly. And you are the experience at every given moment. That's who you are. There is no knowledge without the experience. Otherwise, it's just information. And, you know, my eldest grandchild, who's 6, said, he asked me once, what would be the end number? And I said, there is no end to the number. It's in Hebrew, we say en sof. It's like there isn't an end. And he sort of, contemplated it. So to him, he said, I need a favor from you. So he said, well, first count till the end.
Oh, no, forever.
But I understand, is God also infinite? Does he also, and I said, yes. He said, but how can I see him? I said, well, because he's infinite, you see him in everything, because he's everything and non-everything. And wherever you're looking at him, you're looking at it. And he sort of did this he put his hand to his cheek and said, I think I understand. And I'm sure he did, because he doesn't have all this stuff that we have to carry as grown-ups. I think purely he really got it. So that was quite thrilling. And that's a space I've got to. That's a space that I've got to. I don't know what God is. I feel it. I feel him, it, whatever you want to call it. And I don't even care giving it a name. People are scared to say God. But, in Hebrew, God, Elohim, actually means the powers that are invested in us. There are 2 powers. So when we say, for example, we call the ego separate from God, but he isn't, because God created that too. But those are powers. And if we didn't have a contrast, we wouldn't be moving, because that's what happened when we were in Eden. We were one. We didn't know who we were. We didn't know anything. And then there's a moment that we're shot out of that vessel and we're on our own. We become survivors. And in that moment, the ego takes the driver's seat, and his best friend is the mind, and the mind is giving him data. But the data he can give him is only recorded. It's not something new. He can't give him anything that he that has to do with the now or has to do with the next moment, because that he doesn't know that, right? So we understand that they're actually lying to us. But what happens in that moment that we leave that vessel, we become survivors. In fact, the first human DNA imprint is the survivor one, because there wasn't a DNA before. And so what happens is that ego DNA wants to bring you back home to that place every single time. So every time you think you've overcome something, or you have, succeeded in something, it says, oh, really? I'm going to get you back.
Yeah.
We have to overcome that. We've got to be under his radar.
That takes practice, doesn't it, Ronny?
Yeah.
I mean, spiritual practice, from my understanding. And with that in mind, I asked the question about who you are in your own words, and you didn't mention. You are the mentor of the Transformative Be and It Will Be method, and the author of the book, which has the same title, Be and It Will Be. The simple and easy way to find peace within. And also the new book that we'll be talking today is Daily Inspirations with Ronny's Doodles. Be and It Will Be. So how did you come to do what you're doing today, to be, in the sense, to have this felt understanding of life itself? Was that a journey?
I truly believe that we don't do anything. We're being led that we each have the destiny and we're being led into it. So even if I go to my childhood, I can see it. I can see that I used to feel like I was the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. Edit that.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And I used to find that I was very clear to me when I was saying things, but people didn't understand me. And I was frustrated because but I'm being very clear. Why do you not understand what I'm saying? And so that was the thing. But I think I spoke about this last time. My first real experience, which is out of body, and I have them all the time now. But at that first time that it happened, I was at a friend's. We lived in Rhodesia at the time, which was Zimbabwe today in Africa. And until I was 9, and then we went to London. So there was a moment that we were at these friends' house, and they had this swimming pool, and there was a barbecue going on, and I'm 7, and I'm in the pool, and I start drowning. And in that moment, I leave the body. So I'm watching from above. I'm watching my body below. Everybody's panicky. Everybody is going, and my father jumps in and he pulls me out and he starts pumping the water. And I'm up there in bliss. I don't want to come back. And, when I look at the colors today, because I draw and I paint, when I look at the colors, there is no color that matches the colors that I was watching. And then there's a moment that he takes out the water and I come back into the body as if, I don't know, it felt like an earthquake. I was like, boom. And I realized I had no say in that. But there were 2 understandings, 2 knowingness things that happened to me in that moment, which I understood why that happened. One was that there is no end. It is finite. We do not die. The body might go, but we do not die. But the other thing was amazing, because the other thing says this. When we look at a lion attacking a zebra, we think, oh my God, we see the flesh, the zebra is hurting and so on. But no, that zebra left its body the moment before he was attacked. This is the interesting thing. So at death, we do not feel the flesh wounds. If somebody is shot to die, he will not feel the pain. Right. He will leave a moment before the shot. But if he's meant to live, he will feel pain.
That makes sense. That's how beautiful consciousness, God, that beautiful divine energy is. And won't let us suffer on purpose, right? It has to have it's not let us suffer on purpose. There's a purpose to suffering. That's what it sounds like. Although I like not to think that way, because I do feel like ignorance is the cause of all suffering, not knowing that we are divine energy, that we are limitless and infinite energy. Yeah. So not knowing that causes suffering.
I think more than that. This is the conclusion I came to. Because as we said, the moment you say I, that's the ego wanting something. And the ego always wants to feel what the soul already has. So it might take drugs to try and get to that euphoria. It might do certain things, but then it wants it again because the time lapses. This is the interesting thing about that I ego. If I'm praying to God, and even if I try to pray in the name of somebody else, and I'm saying, please heal that person, or please heal me, or please bring me abundance, or please that is the ego wanting. That's the ego wanting. It cannot be supplied because, as we said, imprint of the ego's DNA is a survivor. So underneath that wanting is the understanding and belief that won't happen. That's why I'm asking for it. But the real prayer is, and this is what we really have to understand, there's a creator. That creator created me and you. He chose himself to choose us so that he can experience himself for himself. So the right prayer would be, I surrender all my attachments to you. I'm asking you to guide me and show me what you want for us, because we're co-creators with him. But we're the ones that are doing the physical manifestation. He's delivering the idea form. And with the idea, notice this, when an idea arrives, it does not come from the chatterbox, from a different space, and automatically you feel inspiration coming up. It's something you look for. It happens on its own. The ego keeps searching for happiness. The soul doesn't need to search for it, because it is happiness. It is being serene. So there's no searching there. So it just surfaces. You're actually talking to God when an idea arrives. God actually is talking to you, and he's saying, sending you an idea.
It's very inspiring. That's true. It feels like a calling. It feels very different. That's so true, Ronny. Yeah, it doesn't feel the same as thoughts, as rational thinking. So true. So how do we learn to surrender? Yeah, how do we do that in a way that's safe too? Is that a process, or can we just do it in an instant? Can we just...
It's an understanding that we can do in an instant, but I always say to people that before you do an exercise, you really have to believe it, so that you have no doubts. If I truly believe that the ego mind are liars, then I don't go to them. There's no point. Okay. So the first thing to understand is that I've got two ways. One is through getting hit every single time till I hit my rim and I say, okay.
Yes. Yes.
Or I can say, I agree that I don't know. Yeah. I agree to know that I am only an experience of you. And I agree to leave the story behind and only be in my state of being. So the point is this is what we can't talk a spiritual talk without talking about karma, because we don't come into this world tabula rasa. That means with nothing. Okay. And a research has even been done that parents really only have 5% impact on their children, because we each come in with unfinished business. And, in our religion, there's the unseen law is the Kabbalah. If you go to the Mexicans, it's the Toltec. If you go to the Hawaiian, it's the Ho'oponopono. Everybody's got the wisdom that lies underneath the whatever we thought was the truth, but it isn't. So when it says an eye for an eye, it actually means it's a mirror. It doesn't mean I'm here to revenge you. It means I'm looking at you and looking at me while I'm looking at you. So it's an eye for an eye. So if we're talking about karma, we in this day and age in particular have to break the karmas. And the way to do that is first to understand that any pain you feel, whether it's physical or whether it's emotional, started with that first blueprint. And what happens is that blueprint started reincarnating into different characters and different lessons, but the trigger will only bring up that original emotion and pain. So a psychologist would take you back to your childhood and say, oh, that's because your father once hit you or something like that. I don't have the patience to go through all my reincarnations. In Kabbalah, klipot means like an onion peel, okay? I want to go straight to the beginning, to the origin. And if I go there, I don't want the stories. I want to just allow that energy field, because it's literally an energy field. I just want to allow it to do its own thing. It's come to visit in order to cleanse and to leave. I don't have to do anything, only give it permission. And adjacent to that, I have to be in the here and now living this life. So what actually happens, we're living a duality of a past life and a present life at the same time. So every emotion that we have has nothing to do with this moment. It's that original one. And that's the one that allowed to go so that we can really enter the phase that everybody's talking about, which is the fifth dimension. And this is interesting because we're not in the fourth dimension, we're in the third dimension. And the third dimension is one of need. A doctor needs a patient. I'm a mentor, I need a client. You need to do this. The needs get very mixed up with the generosity and what we want to give. And that's what we've got to get rid of. But what happened to the fourth dimension? Fourth dimension is death. Two ways, either with the body or the death of the ego while alive. But it's the death of the ego. It's the death of the survivor. That's when we enter the fifth dimension where we all become one. So I don't know if you've been following the news and what's happening here in Israel. There are two levels of looking at this. If we're looking at the normal everyday level, then it's chaos and our prime minister just won't come down the tree. And it's horrible what's happening here, okay?
Yeah.
But we're at the onset of what we call Pesach, which is Passover. And Passover is about the Israelites leaving Egypt. And at the time, Egypt was considered the dark, coming from the dark into the light. And if you look at what happened, every time there was a hit, something happened, a plague or whatever, God opened Pharaoh's heart. But then he said, hang on, they still don't get it. No, I'm closing his heart again. Okay. Until they got to the 10th. And the 10th one was about the children. About the children. And if we go to what happened with Corona, that's also the beginning of the awakening of all these vaccines. I thank God, didn't take them. A lot of people around, I don't even want to get into what's happening with them. It's not pleasant. But when it came to the children, even those who were vaccinated said, up until here, we're stopping this. We're not. Said we're not doing this to the children. And then I call it the 11th hit. He opens Pharaoh's heart and the Israelites go out, but then they've got this final test, the most important test that will explain the surrender. They are standing up opposite the sea. What do they know for sure? They're not going back. They've reached the brim. They got it. They're not going back for more. And now they're left with the mind saying, but if you go into the sea, you're going to drown. That's what the mind knows because that's the database, right? Yeah. But they don't have another option. And then they go into the sea. The sea opens when it hits the chin. A moment before, there's a moment that they say, okay, we surrender. And then the sea opens. Okay. So if we're looking at what's happening here, in the spiritual realm, the prime minister is actually angry because of him, he's causing everybody to leave their homes and come together and say, we don't want this corruption anymore. We don't want the suffering anymore. We want to be one. And he cannot do anything because he is being driven from above. This is not, he's just a character, he's playing a very important role. So we understand again that God is the two powers that are helping us to do our spiritual path. One power is the one that he carries us, and the other power is the one that he pushes us. And if we allow that push to understand that that push is our friend, we know what he's doing. He's here to get us into our integrity. And that integrity is our barometer. And in that moment, we are one. So that's it. We can agree to it right now without having to go through chaos, or we'll have to go through chaos. Eventually, we'll reach the same space and we're going to surrender. So
yes, I had lots of goosebumps while you're talking. So it's almost like a confirmation of that. So trust is very important, isn't it, Ronny? That's what it comes to me over and over again, because it is the body-mind complex that we call the ego, trusting God, surrendering to that. But I do also see ignorance. I go back to the ignorance. So it's also ignorance. So it's a product of, I mean, everything is happening. It's not that that God is in everything, is that everything is in God, as you said clearly. So ignorance is also happening in this realm of appearances, of experience, of the ego realm, which is, as from what I understand, the way you say, we can't turn this reality, which is nature, earth, into the heaven realm, one that's we are all connected and we are one.
No, we can. We can do that. We first have to have a deep acceptance that there's something bigger than us. That has to be, it's more than trust, it's acceptance. You get to a point that you say, listen, I've been beating this bush for so long, I just need to take a look back and say, you know what, I don't have to know. And then you're already in that space of acceptance, because acceptance gets you to the next level. Anything under acceptance is of the ego. That's the control.
Right, control, fight. There's a lot of fight, conflict. Yes, my practices, or where I come from, it's really that we are already one regardless of whatever is happening. So in me, there's no that strive, that wanting to get somewhere to that vision of oneness, because I'm already here. Everything, I mean, how can that not be? There's nothing that's separate. So everything is connected. Everything is happening under God or in God. So that's so clear to me that it's almost like now the mind itself has a hard time understanding getting somewhere, getting to a place of peace, of oneness, because it's already here. It was never apart from us.
Yeah, but the mind can't, because the mind is a recording machine. It doesn't have emotions. The ego doesn't have emotions. As we said before, the energy field is the emotion. We gave it a name. We called it emotion. But if you take the name away, you literally feel it. You know, I have the grandchildren, right? So the girl is also 6. She was crying. She was very sad. She was jealous of her middle sister. And I said to her, "What's wrong?" And she says, "I'm very sad." And she's crying.
Yes.
She said, "Tell me, you feel the sadness?" And I pointed, "Is it in your chest or in your tummy?" And she says, "In my tummy." So I said, "Well, why don't you massage your tummy and say, 'Oh, it's okay, don't worry, it's okay,' and see how that energy field disappears?" And so her focus came onto the energy field, and she's rubbing her tummy, and then there's a moment that it just dissipates. And so if we could teach that so early on and leave the story and understand that the story and the trigger is only there to show me that I have an energy field to cleanse. And the only way to cleanse the energy field is to notice it, allow it, not interfere, drop the story. Because it's not about the story. It's about this old energy field that is already there. It's been there since the beginning of us being physical. If we want to cleanse, we want to have less of the talk and more allowing. And that's, again, acceptance. So it's as if God says, look, I know we have a prayer that says that we call it the Shema, which means, actually I call it the technology of life, because in it, God said, all I need from you is to love me, and you will have covered all the covenants. Just love me, be with me, and I will do everything else. You won't have to do a thing. But the minute you start craving or running after something, that becomes another God. I mean, look what happens when people are addicted, even to people. And what happens when you chase somebody? The other person runs. So you're constantly running to attract something. And it could be sugar and it could be alcohol. But in that moment, you've left God. And in that moment, he can't supply everything because you've turned that into your God. Okay? So we have to understand that if we want to be co-creators, we have to surrender the ego that thinks it needs the credit for everything, that it thinks it knows, that it thinks it says, okay. I mean, I had this couple over the other day, and the girl was saying that at the beginning, she was chasing him all the time. And she said, no, I know he's for me. I know he's for me. And they used to split and get together and split and get together. At some point, they got a divorce because they understood that all of their romance, as it were, was based on craving. It had nothing to do, they didn't even know who they were to each other.
Right.
It was all about obsession and who was more in control and so on and so forth. I know for me, Valeria, that I do not want to struggle anymore. I don't. I want to live in peace. And I think we all want that. And I want to be free of the struggle. And the minute I'm wanting something or longing for something, I'm struggling. And I don't want that. I want to be free of the struggle. So I've learned to let everything go. If somebody needs space, I help them get the space. I let go. I don't want anybody next to me who doesn't feel they want to be, and the other way around. I want to be able to be free for somebody to respect that I might need my space, but it's nothing to do with them. It's because of my inner being is saying, I need some space right now. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we don't have the patience, then the ego wants to be in control, because the ego is always afraid of dying. And it's always afraid of losing. You know, I can tell you a very personal story of my first husband. I didn't want to get married, but I knew I had to, because my children had to come out of that connection.
Yeah.
I even remember at the wedding, I'm going, oh my God, I wish I could do a runner.
Yes.
I looked sideways and I saw that I was about to marry his parents.
Oh, no. Yes.
And I was always a person, a child. I needed freedom. I needed to love everybody and not be attached. And this is one of my biggest tests. And so, of course, I couldn't get a runner. And, you know, I channel. So channeling said to me, but I'm sorry, darling, the kids have to come out through this liaison. You're going to have to stick it through. And you have to understand also how God works, because, again, it's karma. And the chemistry between two people is because there was karma between them. And those are the little workshops. So even when you fall in love, that's the lie. That's how God catches it. He puts you in that space and he says, well, I'm sorry, you know, you think you're falling in love. No, the glue that puts you together for your workshop. So during my marriage, I used to throw the word divorce out, but I never went through with any of it because I was scared to lose. I thought if I got a divorce, I would lose. I would lose the house or part of the house or this or whatever. And I went through. And then, of course, the other side knows if you love them or not. They feel it. At some point, he started having an affair with his secretary. For a whole year, I didn't know. I was buried under the sand. And then they managed to forge signatures and take the house. And I then left with nothing and had to feed two children on my own. And I looked and I said, isn't that amazing? Because had I have been in my integrity and told my truth, I still would have been left with some property at the time, because it would have been amicable. It would have been a different type of separation. Okay. But then God says, well, you didn't live your integrity, and I'm going to show you what it is to lose. And then you lose everything and you realize you're still alive. I didn't lose me. I was still alive. And that's when I understood my soul is not for sale. It's for sale. And I had to be tested again 18 years later and marry again. And the same thing.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Because I wasn't able to just be honest enough to say, this is not for me. And this is not for you if it's not for me, because then it's based on a lie. Had I had that courage, then everything else would have looked differently. So it's the first understanding that before we go to God, we must first go to our inner barometer, which is God, which is where the truth is. And be brave enough to say, I'm willing to lose that so that I don't lose me. And that's where it is. Because if I lose me, I'm not good for anyone.
Yeah, I'm sorry that for you going through all those challenges, it it's interesting. I can feel those things. It's, of course, I've been through a lot of challenges myself. And how do we know the difference between, when you speak of surrendering and accepting, trusting, how do we know the difference between that integrity that you speak of as well? How do we know that this is a calling? Yeah, we are supposed to do this or not, not supposed to. Yeah. What is the difference?
Yeah. I think we have a problem with language, because language can never really explain, but the body knows the truth. The body knows when it's in a struggle and it's condensing, or when it's free. And that's where integrity is. That's where it lives. It lives in freedom. It lives in the soul. It doesn't live in the ego. There's no integrity in the ego. The ego is a manipulator. It wants to have something that will manipulate, but the soul has no need. It's just dancing. By the way, I don't regret anything. The person you're talking to today can only have been the one that went through all that. And I think that a lot of spiritual teachers, because I've spoken to quite a few, really go through really, really tough things so that they can teach, so that they can say, hey, here we are. The other day I said, I love to talk to him, and I say, give me some slack. Can you not make it big? And it could be, so I go down to the car, and I had I open the door and it gets stuck in the door of my neighbor's car. I'm going, okay, but inside me, I'm feeling like, I don't know, truck came all over me, as if you were looking at the outside of me, you'd say, oh, come on, what just happened? Nothing. But inside me, it felt like I was being run over, okay? And I said, oh, okay, I know, you just delivered. I said, can you give me some slack? So there's nothing tragic, but
God, yeah.
Cleansing this old feeling.
Yeah.
And then a neighbor came along and she said, what's wrong? She says, I don't know, look. And it turned into some sort of joke. We ended up laughing. And she just picked up the door and lifted it out. And I thought, how did you do that? So it has nothing to do with the outside world. The circumstances don't matter. The only place that is moving in time and space is the energy field within us. And whatever rises automatically is that old place that we just have to allow it, let it go through it. And at the same time, make a conscious decision to say, how do I want to live this day? And the only way to live this day is to say, I want to be serene. I want to be happy. And the only way to do that is to surrender the need to be in control of anything. And so it starts with acceptance. Acceptance is always the first place to go. We accept what is happening. Again, what is happening is within me. There's nothing happening on the outside. The chair doesn't care that it's crooked. If I go, oh God, I'm not going to feel good until I straighten the chair, I'm the one moving in time and space. The chair doesn't care. So circumstances don't matter. I accept me. I accept what's happening within me at any given moment. In that moment of acceptance of that energy field, you're already serene, because you're not resisting it, you're not fighting it. That energy field can now dissipate. Now you're clear. And now you can consciously just decide. You can use a prop, you can use a flower, or you can just, I believe, and that's what happens to me, that the moment I'm in acceptance, the serenity comes. I don't have to do anything in particular. And that's what we want. Whatever we do, that's what we want. We want peace within. That's what we want to feel every day, every minute. And as you said before, it is a practice, like brushing your teeth. You don't even think about brushing your teeth anymore. So it's a sort of ritual. I'm in bed in the morning, and I don't get out of bed until I've said, okay, am I attached to something? Am I worried about something? If I'm worried, I'm attached. Does my life depend on that? Does my life depend on that? I cleanse all of that. And I say to God, I trust that you will show me and you will help me discover my day. I don't have to know it. It's a bungee jump, just like the Israelites jumped into the sea. That's what it is. It's a bungee jump into the day, and to say, I'm relinquishing my need to know. And in that moment, wow, miracles just appear.
Yeah.
They've been there all along. We just didn't see them when we were in the ego.
Right. Wow.
But that's how I get out of bed. Because if I don't, I'm going to bring everybody else down with me.
Yeah. Very clear the way you explained this process, because I remember really well going through deep depression, like really feeling depressed. And there was the light acceptance. And then everything changed. It moved very differently after that experience. So I think it was 2020, I interviewed this author. He's a mystic, John Robinson. And he wrote a book recently titled I Am God. And I don't think I have seen anyone writing, and it's really like big letters, I am God. Yeah. But the interesting thing is, if we don't know we are God, then we suffer as a human, don't we?
Yeah, and we're in the DNA of the survivor, of the physical realm, yes. The I am, you see, the first time I came across that was about almost 25 years ago, when I first went to India. And there was this guru who put us under this tree. It was a group of us. And he said, look at the tree and just say, I am the tree. And so I looked at my partner and I said, I'm the tree. And he said, quiet.
Yes, I can see that.
That's what he said. And I'm there. And there's a moment that there's no difference between me and the tree. And in Hebrew, the I am that I am is Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. You can't get out of that. That's when you understand that you're God and God is you and there's all one and it's infinite. Because if I'm looking, I mean, you can see me on video now, so I'm going to show you. If I'm looking at this glass, that glass has no existence other than my experience of it. So where does that glass live? It lives within my experience, within me, right? So I am the glass. So if I'm the glass, then I'm also you, and you're also me. And on that level, we're all connected. You see? And the I am that I am, whatever I'm looking at, is me experiencing me looking at that. Okay, and you can't get out of that. And you spend 24/7 with yourself. And I say to myself, Ronny, if you're going to overthink today and you're going to be in a bad mood, you're going to be in bad company.
Yes, for sure. Yes. Yeah.
And I want to be in good company because I think also age must have something to do with it, because the older I get, the more I think I don't want to spend time on rubbish. I just don't. It's like you have $1,000, say you have $1,000. So with that $1,000, you can buy lots of little things. You can buy one big thing, or you can buy a medium thing, and So you have 100% energy. If in that energy field that I have, I am resentful, or I'm jealous, or I'm this, or I'm that, I've depleted my energy. What am I left with? So what am I broadcasting? Because we're all broadcasters of our energies. So if I'm broadcasting now this and that, I'm bringing everybody else down, because there has to be a collector at the end of my broadcast, because that's what a wavelength is. It could be somebody in Hawaii and I'm in Israel, but there has to be a collector. So I am actually now influencing somebody. But if I am cleansed, I'm influencing a hell of a lot of people without even being on stage anywhere. From where I am, on my own, I can do much more to influence by being that pure broadcaster. Okay. I don't need an audience. I don't have to have the ego wants to know. Did you see me? Did you clap your hands? That's what the ego wants. We don't really need that if we really want to influence. So that is the I am that I am. And the place that we have to accept is also that there's certain things we'll never know. You know, there's this argument about, did Armstrong go to the moon? Did he not go to the moon? Yeah. People are like, I don't know if he went to the moon. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, even if he did go to the moon, he still doesn't know what the moon is. Because if he went to the moon, he was wearing this thing, touching with the gloves. Do we know what the moon is? We know because we see something. We called it the moon. We were told that it causes tide. But apart from that, if I'm not witnessing it, does it exist? And I want to be in the here and now, enjoying what I see, but I don't need to know. I don't need to know, because the more I think I need to know, I'm again living the intellect. And by the way, he'll never know. We'll never know. We'll not know what God is. We won't. The science can try and search for answers. They have this ongoing experiment in CERN, where it's been ongoing, I think, for over 30 years, where they take two, you know what a quark is? Yeah, so they took two quarks that you can't see, because the quark is the energy that moves the proton around the, and they separated and put them in two tunnels, and they make them go faster than the speed of light, and at some point they clash, and they're proving that fiber is made out of nothing. Fine. You still don't know what God is, and you will never know what God is. You can't know it here. You can join him through the heart. And they've also discovered that the heart has the same neurocells that the brain has, and it's the actual real brain, because familiarity comes through the heart. It doesn't come from the mind. When you see somebody for the first time in this lifetime, but he seems familiar, because the heart recognized him. Okay, so we have to learn how to go through the heart so that we can be joined, so we can live in acceptance and let go of wanting to know what God is. We have to let go of the intellect. We have to just allow ourselves to feel God. And then we know, because there's a difference between knowledge and knowingness. Knowingness is in the heart, knowledge is in the brain.
Right. That's exactly it. It cannot, because God is not a thing, and we are very much, the intellect is an instrument to point out things, to study, analyze objects. So God is not an object, right?
And even if you say that, that's because our language is so limited, okay? So when somebody says explain channeling, I can't. It's like a download. And then again, I don't know what it is. I know it's happening. I don't know what it is. So even if we say God is not an object, that's still the intellect trying to understand what he is.
Yes, in a way that's very much true, right? We are in the realm of mind. And it's interesting you say that, because the path that I have followed is Vedanta, which is the path of knowledge. It's the path of truth, of knowledge. You probably heard about Advaita Vedanta. It's non-duality. And they are trying, as the science and spirituality, that's the closest I think I could get to that, merging of the two. It's explained in such a clear way as well. It's like the eyes trying to see the eyes. You can't really see it. The eyes cannot see themselves. But we know it's there, right? I know it's through the eyes that I can see things, that I can experience this object world, this which we call life.
We don't see with the eyes. We see with the mind. It's in the mind. If two of us go to a film, we're not going to watch different films. It's the same film. And if you go, you say the projector's in the back and you think the film's in the front. But if you close the projector, you've closed the film. So you're watching your own movie all the time. It's all within you, you see. There's nothing outside. There's only you experiencing what you think you see. And I had an amazing, God really came to me that day. I gave this workshop in France before the corona, and there were about 40 people there. And there was one woman who was blind from the day she was born. And so the exercise was to close your eyes and imagine a flower. Okay? So the woman that was sitting on my left was rolling her eyes at me and saying, but she can't participate in this exercise. She's blind. And I said, wait, and I was so grateful for God for this. So we did the rounds, and everybody was explaining and what flower they saw, and one was pink and one was this, and we get to her. I mean, I get goosebumps every time I remember this. And she starts describing a field to the ninth, with all the flowers and all the trees and the colors. And people are astounded, and they're saying to her, are you sure that you're blind from birth? And she says, yes. And I say, that's our evidence. We see nothing with the eyes. We see in the mind's eye. And why is that? This is the interesting thing. When we leave the vessel, Because remember, when we're in the vessel, we're one. We don't know we're one. We don't know anything. We don't have knowledge, right?
Right.
So the minute we leave the vessel and the ego is the driver now, where did God disappear to? He hides in our imagination because he has all the ideas. So a blind person can see what God sees in the mind, okay? In the imagination.
Yeah.
So it's what you do with the eyes. I think there's even an experiment that shows that the eye only detects about a few seconds after the brain already knows the information.
Yeah. That's also clear. In Vedanta, it's very clear that everything is experienced within the mind, right? It's not something that's out there. The example, I think they give that as the example of the eye, seeing the eyes, just from the perspective of the physical, that we think the perception of the physical experience being what I see, the light, you hear. That's, very much true.
There's no perception outside of you.
Yes, still happening, right? Yes. Perceptions, everything, all experiences. You so absolutely beautifully explained that it's knowledge that gets in the way a lot of times. And it's kind of funny to acknowledge that Vedanta is a school of knowledge. It's about the truth, but through knowledge being the antidote of ignorance. That's how the whole actual system works. So ignorance is not knowing that you're God, and knowledge would be, I am God. I am that. Oh my God, Ronny, I would talk to you forever. Your presence is just so beautiful and enlightening and fun. And that's what it is, isn't it? In the end, I think it's the fun, how much fun you can have with the perceptions, with the playfulness within the mind itself, kind of holding everything, all the experiences, and still knowing that you're one with God. You're not separate from it.
And I think conversations have to be more and more with people who are on the same, we're light workers, and we have to speak this language as much as possible, because otherwise it's very easy to be pulled back, but we've got to keep this language alive. So, we all understand this language when we start talking it because it's familiar, because it's the truth. But we have to make that language, and we have to be more in silence. I've got a lot of friends who are lawyers, have mundane things, and sometimes, and I love them dearly, but sometimes I get exhausted because things all the time. And I don't want proof. No. And they go to Google and I go, no, just some space right now. I don't want to know. Just don't want to know. What am I going to do with all these facts?
Yes. And you know what it is, Ronny? It's that old, let's say, habit of the perception that everything's outside. So we start with the outside, analyzing everything. Oh, let's say what this is made of, all the particles and the trees. And I think, honestly, I know it's not a waste. Nothing's wasted in this dance. But there's something funny about it. I don't know. When I see scientists, looking deeper into the core of what, existence. Let's find God. Let's find out what God is. In a way, it's funny, but I know it's not, because also the intelligence is something that it happens in the realm of God. So it's playful too, isn't it? To analyze things.
Well, he's the power. He's both powers. It's not separate from him, but he created it in a way so that if we're not waking up on our own, we need to be pushed into waking up. And when you wake up finally, it's because you've reached your brim. It comes to a place where you say, just like I say, I get exhausted. Okay, leave me out of this. Okay. It's when you reach your brim and you say, okay, I'm suffocating. I'm depressed. What is depressed? Jim Carrey had a nice way of explaining it. He said, depressed means depressed. Your body needs a deep rest. It wants to stop this noise. Okay. And in that place, you're automatically surrendering. So I'm saying, if you know that, if that place is so familiar, because we've been through that so many times, where we've been racing something and then we've had to collapse and then we surrendered, why can I just not immediately surrender? Why do I have to go through all of that? I want to surrender right now, before that. And that's putting the cart before the horse. That's saying, you know what? I know I'm going to surrender in the end. I'm going to do that right now because I want to gain the serenity. I want to gain the discovery. I want to know what you upstairs, inside me, wherever you are, God, has in store for me. I don't want to dictate it. I want you to tell me and you to show me. Is it happened with my art? Suddenly I'm doodling and I'm having exhibitions. And at my age, I'm thinking, oh, he is clever, this guy. Nothing to do with me. I'm the instrument that's painting. That's why I love them. If I thought it was me, I would never show you a picture because I'd be critical of it and I would rub it out and God knows. I know it's not me. And every time it comes to fruition, I look at it and I'm saying, oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
Oh my God. And that came through me and I had nothing to do with it. I was just doing that.
Making a comment about that, it's really beautiful. I looked at the book. So the book is titled The Doodle Book, Daily Inspirations with Ronny's Doodles, Be and It Will Be. It's truly beautiful. I love the colors and it's, it makes you stop and just stay there for a while.
And it's a journal because, for example, this is one of the doodles, so you can see this now.
Yes.
I will do a video. And it has a little message, a spiritual message. So it says, beauty comes in any shape and size. Getting this relieves us from self-criticism and that of others. And then you've got a few pages to journal. How does that resonate with you? Where does that find you? Are you in competition with other people? Do you understand that you've been chosen, that there's nobody else like you in the whole world? And you do not need confidence to be you, because then you'd invite a struggle. You're you anyway. And so be you and leave all the rest. Because if you're struggling to get confidence, that's because you care what somebody else thinks and you're not living your own life. So those are the things this is what I liked about the journal, because you open it up and it has a message for you. And then the point of this journal is to take that message and see what happens within you. How do you find it? So for instance, there's one here that says, it doesn't matter in which direction you are going, as long as you are in charge of your own state of being. Here, everything will feel the best way. And that's that doodle, you see.
Yes, boy, they are truly beautiful. I absolutely love the shapes, the colors, everything about it. And I was looking at them. Yes, right. And you see, it's self-fulfilling, isn't it, Ronny? It's not about showing anything. It's complete. It's whole in itself.
Yeah.
It sustains itself.
I can't go to sleep without drawing or painting. For me, it's just like... I'm so grateful for it. I keep thinking, who would I be if I didn't have it? It's just like this meditative thing. And I always end my teachings with just because you can. Because we do not need a reason to love ourselves. We do not need a reason to appreciate ourselves. We do not need a reason. Just because we can, we have the choice. We were given the free choice to choose how to feel about ourselves, because that's the magnet. The way I feel about me, not through the ego sense, not through, oh, I'm pretty, I'm sexy and all that. No, it's through the serenity place, through that peace within, and just because we can. And I feel that, and everything else just works itself out. I don't have to run after anything. I have another saying that says, be the flower, not the bee. And then you admit it to you. You don't race and you don't chase. And it's a journey. It's a journey. I think accepting that we're in a journey and we don't have a goal and we don't have to think that it has to end with something, but accept that the journey, and he's leading me through the journey. And I don't want to argue with him. I call it him. I don't argue with him. Because he knows me in the end. He knows me before I know me.
Yes.
I'm in discovery of who I am.
As the body-mind, right? As the body-mind complex, yeah, for sure. Because you resonate to me as you already know. Of course, you know, but you don't know at the same time. And maybe that's why you speak that way. But it's very clear to me, even the energetic resonance of the expression of you. It's very clear. So, and I want to thank you again as almost as a prayer for your expression, this reality. We do need that. Boy, we do need that. Thank you, Ronny.
Thank you for being there and for the platform you've made available for this language to come out. I think it's so important right now in this day and age. We have to be light workers, and first for ourselves, and we have to bring everybody up,
Yes.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And all the way you talk about the language, there is this specific language that a lot of times it could be expressed through silence, but it's fun to talk about, isn't it?
Well, relay it, then we first have to talk about it. But at the end of the day, we want to live in the state of being of silence within. So we have to, my ego used to eat up everybody else's. I always wanted the last word, and you can tell now I'm also very verbal. But I can sit with people and not have to open my mouth. And for me, that is huge. I can just sit and allow it and not feel that I've got to prove anything. Because within me, I recognize that the older I get, the more I remember my childhood, and that everything was very clear in that realm, in that space. And I realized that I never had an argument about whether there is a God or there isn't. It didn't mean that I wasn't put through the process, but I never doubted. I never had a doubt. So for me, when somebody has a doubt, it's strange to me, if you see what I mean. It's like, what do you mean? How could you not understand that? If you don't understand it, there has to be I don't understand. I mean, that's the paradox.
Yeah. It's incredible how a lot of times we know and we express, we live it as you do clearly. But at the same time, there's this energy of humbleness. Like, it's almost like being humble, but it's not really that, because you're not trying to be humble. You're very expressive. It's just being you, as you said. You can't help it but be yourself. And however it's manifested.
That's the expression.
Yes, right. For this reality, absolutely. Yeah, it's the only way, right, Ronny, we can...
Anyway.
Yeah, we can
help. And I think that if we remember we've come here to express and not to impress, then it's okay to be the dance, and it's okay to be the one that's verbal, and it's okay as long as you're not interested in getting the feedback of what you're trying to impress, but you are actually expressing.
Yes, there's a huge difference between those two, right? Expressing and impressing. Oh, and even trying to make an impact, which would be probably another one, have the intention, all these intentions we have. Yes, yeah. And it is like being a flower, isn't it? I know you mentioned the flower before. The flower is not trying to be beautiful, but it is beautiful.
Yeah.
Without trying.
It's just there.
Yes.
And it has all these people, bees and birds, and everybody's towards the flower. It's not doing anything.
Yes, but just being itself, right. Thank you so much again for your presence, for this conversation we had today. Yeah, I'm doing the same here. That's interesting. I always do that in my video conversations, and hopefully we'll meet again. I would love that, of course. But before we say goodbye for today, Ronny, what's the best place to find more information about you and your books?
Well, I'm on the media, so I have a YouTube channel. I admit it's not huge. It's finding the time to put up a video, but gradually growing. I have TikTok. I have Facebook. Every day, there's a new post that's coming through me that I put up that's very inspiring to me and to whoever's looking at it. I put videos up. I put TikToks up. So you can find me on the media. The books are on Amazon. I'm now looking for the next academic to write my next book with me. I want the questions to come from an academic, somebody who's skeptical, and allow the answers to come through. So that's my next thing. And I give workshops, usually one-on-one throughout the world. I've got people in Miami and different hours. And so on. I never know how they come to me. I never know. Someone will just suddenly come across a video or something, and they'll come and they'll approach me. I don't know. It's not like this thing that everybody's talking about, algorithms, and I can't explain it. I do know that whoever comes needed to come, and I don't ask the questions anymore. But so I give private sessions. Sometimes I'll give lectures, and I'll have group workshops. At the end of the day, I call this program a hit and run, because once you've gone through the process, you can't see the world the way you've seen it before. Psychology is about you reacting to the world, and the spiritual world says the world is reacting to me. And you get to that space where you stop asking those questions, and you're always in the sense, oh, that's showing up for me. I must look at that, rather than he did that to me.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Yes. Thank you so much again for this timeless wisdom that you share. And of course, that I must agree. I'm not as skeptical, but you said you need one. I'll have your website, beanditwillbe.com, on your podcast profile. Thank you so much again, Ronny, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, darling. Yes. And have a great day.
Oh, you too. Bye for now, my dear.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Ronny Hatchwell and her work, please visit beanditwillbe.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.